Hey, Adam.
Yes.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
What do you know about the state of jazz today?
It's a sad state of affairs.
You really think so?
Oh, it's so sad out there.
How do you know?
Just from all the YouTube videos I see of all these guys talking about how bad everybody is these days. It must be terrible.
Well, the problem is you're watching YouTube videos about jazz. You need to listen to the state of jazz.
I don't want to do that. These guys say it's not good. I'm Adam Manis.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
And that's music explored and possibly clouds being yelled at. Is that what's happening?
Clouds being yelled at. Peter, brought to you by Open Studio. Go to openstudiojazz.com for all your jazz lesson needs.
Yes.
Peter, today we're talking about the state of jazz.
We are. We got to get one thing out of the way before we talk about that.
Okay.
And I want you to explain what you said earlier. I got to get one thing off my chest, literally. We just came from getting a coffee at one of our favorite spots together, planning out these beautiful episodes.
True.
And we got mocked for our attire.
We don't call each other before we decide what we're going to wear.
We were accused by someone who's actually a friend.
It's just the same kind of collar, but it's not even the same kind of collar, honestly.
We were accused of calling each other to coordinate outfits.
Which is weird, because I'm wearing olive pants, you're wearing blue jeans.
You have an STL hat on.
You've got yours buttoned up. I've got a white T-shirt under
A young
mine.
woman came up to us and said, hey, do you guys call each other each day to coordinate your outfits?
Not really.
That's kind of an aggressive
I have,
statement.
Peter, since you started picking up the camp collar shirts, I've stopped wearing them so much till you'll hear it tapings because I don't want to. But this morning I was just like really feeling this shirt, so I thought I would put it on. But
Well,
I knew there would be some kind of match.
I just learned the term.
The camp collar?
Yeah.
Shirt of the summer, baby.
I don't even like to go camping, but it's all good. Okay, could you explain what you were saying in the intro, please? Because I was a little confused.
Oh, about
terms
how
of
the state
YouTube.
of jazz is terrible?
Yeah, who's saying that?
Peter, you know, when I was 23 years old, music was really great. It was so emotionally tinged.
Perry
So many
Como.
great things were happening, and the
Ella
music was
Fitzgerald.
terrific. And now all the music sucks. Now all these kids, they're making music, and I don't understand why anybody would like it.
Oh.
So I'm not going to be into this, I feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Some of these kids, I'm just looking over
By the way,
the playlist.
being a little facetious here,
Oh, God,
I'm
no, I
ribbing
got you.
a lot of our friendly YouTube folks here that love to talk smack on the kids.
Right. I mean, I'm just looking over this playlist that we're going to be going into. Some of these folks are older than us, so there's
I know.
that too.
Yeah.
We've got a nice mix. But yeah, we thought it would be fun to go through the Spotify playlist State of Jazz. That's the name of the playlist. Because although it's not something I go to often, I have dipped into it a little bit over the years. It's apparently one of the largest jazz playlists on Spotify. And Spotify is somewhat of a tastemaker in the music world these days. I don't know if you knew that,
Well,
old
we
man.
listened to that Kenny Garrett album last week, and there was that one track that obviously had made it onto some kind of Spotify playlist and had 6 times the plays that anybody else had.
Yeah. And I think that
Rick, that's Rick.
probably you and I both, we have in different ways, but maybe some overlap, a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Spotify in terms of there is a certain amount of, if only we'd had this when we were coming up, access at our fingertips to every track and album that would be mentioned. Like, have you checked out Clifford Brown's solo on that blues? Oh, and now I'm checking it out, as opposed to, how am I going to go find it? I got to go to the library to research it at the record store. So there's that. But then there's also this weird stuff where you get State of Jazz and there's a list. Well, why don't you go ahead and pull this up, Caleb, so you can see, the good folks can see what we're looking at here.
Oh, you're not even getting into the economics of Spotify, which is also very controversial.
Well, yeah, that's for another episode, my friend. Economics Spotify 101. But no, just anytime you say State of Jazz, and then you've got a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the implication that these are either the most important tracks or albums,
let's break
or they're the
that
most
down.
popular. What are they?
So it's always 100 tracks, and I believe, Peter, they're put
Is that
up
true? It's
here.
100?
Yeah, I believe
Look at
it's
you.
always changing. They're always adding.
Yes.
And so it has nothing to do with like
But then you've also
track.
got Fresh Finds Jazz and Jazz Club and Jazz UK. Are these more important? I don't think so.
I wouldn't so much trust Jazz Club or like Coffee Jazz as much as I would for the State of Jazz. It seems
Right,
like the
let's
State
look
of
at
Jazz
Jazz
is more
Club.
new stuff. You know?
Just to be thrown off.
Yeah, look at the photo of the pretty lady, which is
So are we going by
kind of a red flag.
100? What, pretty lady or photos? What's the red flag?
Well, it's
Or
just
the
like
comment?
we're gonna evoke. Like it might as well be like, you know, a guy like smoking a spliff with a pork pie hat. You know what I'm saying? Like
Oh, okay. So are we going by 141,000 saves? What is a save?
Do you have Spotify? Have you had it for years?
No, I know save, but like I haven't saved. Is that if I press plus here?
Yeah.
Am I getting too much into the minutia here?
Save to your library.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this has 932 saves. So this is big time, right? In terms of the jazz. This is a public playlist.
932,000 saves. Yeah, that's a lot.
And this is controlled by Spotify, I believe. This is not something like we have some open studio playlists that we can direct folks to. But this is in-house from Spotify. So they are the tastemakers. They are the providers.
Yeah.
They are the lovers and the dreamers, right?
Right.
And the subtitle to this is New Jazz for Open Minds. And there's our friend, Walter Smith III, who is our friend. I have open minds. I like new jazz. So this should be made for me. What about you?
I'm new jazz for open minds. It's like they're like daring you to like it. You know what I mean? They're like, listen, you're going to want to open your mind for this playlist.
Right.
Which says a lot, I think, about people's relationship to the music now, including kind of the setup that we started at the beginning of like a lot of folks, older folks don't love the new stuff that's coming out.
Right.
You know?
But you know what? I would say for me, and just not only going to this episode,
A lot of younger folks don't like the new stuff that's coming out too, frankly.
That's right. But so a lot of times when we're talking about it, when we're doing our greatest albums series, I don't know if you've heard of that. Our award-winning greatest album series. What makes this album great? We really emphasize listening to from the beginning to end, and kind of like that old school, we've heard about this record, let's talk about this album as a cultural phenomenon, right? And so that, by its very nature, pushes us into history, often to 1963 or 1959. Those seem to be magical years, but also 1972 with the Donny Hathaway, Roberta Flack. But anyway, we're going back in time because these albums have had time to accumulate love and lore and a history and a cultural place within the music canon, right? The musical canon. And so whereas this here is they're trying to put together what is the current state of jazz. And if this is done well, I think can actually be useful. So I'm willing to go into this with an open mind, looking for some new jazz.
Nice.
He said nice. All right, so can we just jump in and listen to the first track?
Absolutely. This is the Walter Smith.
This is Walter Smith. This is Cezanne, and we're going to talk about the name of the album. This album hasn't come out yet, so I think this is a teaser track that is dropping early on the Blue Note record label.
Blue Note record label.
Are you familiar with that?
I am familiar. Jason Moran on the piano.
Yes.
Eric Harlan on the drums. Open studio artist Ruben Rogers on the bass.
I like it. I have an open mind.
So good. Jason Moran. Walter Smith making some great music these days, man. Lots of good stuff.
Good musical choices he makes. Eric Harlan, tipping, of course. Snare, on point. Mr. Caleb is shaking his head in rhythm. Got a big smile on his face.
Hey, this is such great music. It's so melodic, the improvisation. I love where the piano's sitting in this mix, too.
Walter Smith, the epitome of just relaxed approach to the melodic lines and to the groove, right? Effortless.
Great drumming.
Okay, how do you feel about the state of jazz
playing
so far?
This is heavenly. That is it's such beautiful improvisation. It's so melodic. I love the composition too.
Yeah.
I've only heard it now just once, but I think I could sing some of it back.
Deep.
Yeah, which is a good sign. And then like Walter Smith's, like you said, the relaxed sort of conversational improvisation.
Yeah.
Where you just feel like he's speaking to you
Yes.
somehow.
Yeah.
And then, Eric Harland is a genius, and Jace Moran is genius.
Yeah, yeah.
Rogers is a genius, and that's some high level shit right there.
Absolutely. I love, I actually like this concept of teasing out a track, dropping a track early for this kind of album, which traditionally we wouldn't think. And I have the feeling this is going to be some of the more traditional jazz that's going to have us yelling at the clouds the least on this list. Perhaps.
Yeah.
But, I think this makes me want to hear the rest of the album.
What do you think about the name of the upcoming album? Three of us are from Houston, and Ruben is not.
I love that.
That's a great name for an album.
Yeah.
Three of us are from Houston, and Ruben is not.
And full disclosure,
Killing it.
get the DeBossiers on the line.
DeBossier and DeBossier, our
DeBossier and
attorneys.
associates. I did get a text message recently from about a month ago from Walter Smith asking me to make a short video about Ruben. And he was like, I can't really explain why, but I want to use this part of my promo. I'm asking a couple of cats to do this. If you're up for
Did you do it?
I did it.
You got to.
And now it makes sense. I think he's going to have a little bit of a video teaser.
He did this for
making
his
fun of
last
this.
record, too, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Not the Ruben is not part.
No, but like a video teaser or like compilation clips, I believe.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm honored to be part of that. I
Which is
hope
also
I
a
made
great
the cut.
record.
Hope I-
Yeah, this is if our wheelhouse had a wheelhouse, it would be this band playing music like that. I love that so much, and it feels very fresh. You know? And I know it's like, it just feels like
And I'm looking at this.
sophisticated. It feels like we're all like the world is a sophisticated place.
Right. I'm just looking at the album cover there. If we could pull that up, it's like very. It's got the Texas. Look at that. There's Texas there, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Three of us are from Houston. Okay, now I'm getting it. I like the.
And Ruben is not. And there's one that's not green, and that's Ruben.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
That's right, because Ruben is from the Virgin Islands.
That's a great
famously.
cover. I love that cover.
Shout out to I think they all went to the same high school. Which name is escaping me now? I know Harlan, Walter Smith, and Jason, as well as Glasper, I believe, or is he? Yeah,
Mike Moreno.
yeah, a bunch of great cats from there. So that's gonna be a fun one to listen to, right? Should we move on to number 2 in the state of jazz?
Absolutely. What is number 2?
So this is Michelle and Cello. So this is, I didn't realize she had another record coming out, or maybe this is already out. The album is called No More Water, The Gospel of James Baldwin. That's cool. Trouble. Big fan of Michelle and Cello. We've reviewed her previous record, the Omnichord Real Book, which I think was one of the best releases of the last couple of years. So interested.
What's this one called? No More Water?
Trouble. No More Water, The Gospel of James Baldwin.
Is it out already?
I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
Another Blue Note record.
Right, she's on Blue. Michelle and Cello always doing interesting, impactful things.
That's another word for trouble. Alright. Would you keep me in the?
Do you have the cover up on this one? It is 100% gorgeous.
Would you keep?
What track is this
Would you
one?
keep me in
This
the?
is Trouble. So is the album out?
Would you keep me in the trouble loop?
I guess I could look on here, right?
Just be.
Yeah, August 2nd.
Okay.
Is when it came out.
Oh, wow. It's the premiere.
Struggle starts now right here today. We told all the truth. It's time to make a change. Put our aching hearts to use.
So there's stuff that's connected Michelle's work for years. And I've been a fan. I even got a little chance to play with her years ago. That connects even when she has different producers and stuff. And this sounds like her kind of production, but she's always very involved with the production and the sound of it. I think she's a master in the studio. She's a master live, vocals, if she's playing bass. Like, she has her sound. And I love that she's kind of coming around to being more associated in the jazz world. I don't think her stuff has really changed. To me, her sound hasn't changed over the years.
No.
She's evolved. She's
evolved.
progressed.
She's gotten better.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's got a very distinctive sound to her records specifically. And I think it comes from the low end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
It's addicting.
But she's very specific about how her stuff sounds, if it's live or especially if it's recorded, and that kind of attention to detail from a production standpoint. And then also in terms of like the lyrics, what it is that she's representing in terms of if it's a political statement, if it's a spiritual statement, if it's just her. It's always her artistic statement. But like she's always doing important stuff. You know what I mean? Every time she comes out with something or I see her play or I run into her, I'm like, man, it's so cool. Like, her connection with jazz has always been about doing important, impactful work. She's also like really into just grooving, into improvisation, into bringing in more so-called traditional jazz artists, over the years into the fold. So I love that she's like on this kind of list, State of Jazz, because I think that she really is. Should we go on to number 3? Am I moving too fast?
No, this is
Am I going
great.
too slow?
Let's get to some Brits, Peter.
Am I like Goldilocks? Is this just right?
It's just right.
Okay. Number 3, would you like to intro them? Because I know Ezra Collective, but I'm not really familiar with this, with these folks.
Yeah, it's a UK-based quintet.
Okay.
And I've only heard tracks here and there from Ezra Collective, but I know a lot of people that I respect that love their music.
They're UK-based. How do they land on the Brexit issue? No,
well,
we
let's
don't
find
care.
out.
Okay.
Let's find out. Let's see if there's any clues in the music.
This is featuring Yasmin Lacey.
Birds flying high, I don't know how they feel. People outside, in search of something real.
Question for you before we go on.
Yeah.
That vocal, the way of that vocal miking, that sound, what would you call that? Because that's a very distinctive, kind of modern thing.
It's very compressed.
Very compressed.
There's a lot of compression.
I'm not sure. I'm not a fan of it, but it's so particular, right? That when anybody comes out with that kind of sound, it's kind of like the Blue Note piano sound during that one era. It's like I wasn't a big fan, but I was a big fan of like a lot of the music that was played that came through that piano sound, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I feel about this, but it is what it is, right?
I think much like that sound, this sort of overly compressed vocal sound, it works really well when you're listening to music on your phone. You can clearly hear the
Interesting.
vocals. You're not going to lose any words. And I think it's something that's come out
Is anyone
of
listening to the music on their phone?
most people.
You're talking about coming off their little speaker on the phone. You're not talking about with some bespoke headphones.
Either way.
connected to your phone.
Either way,
to a DAC.
if you're commuting and you have headphones in and it's noisy around you, the vocal
Okay.
pops through.
Gotcha.
But it's not a very rich sound. If you're listening on nice speakers here in our
Yeah.
studio, it's not as rich as if you were
Man, we
just-
become those old dudes that are like, it depends on what you. It really is
I-
true
I-
though.
Flying high,
No, I don't have a preference either way. I like that it can be used as an instrument,
Yeah.
and it's a different tool.
people
This is different.
outside, in search of something real. And I need mine to get me started. Something to get me started. Got to get me started. Give me baseline. Give me dollar wine. God gave me feet for dancing.
All right.
And that's exactly what I do. Give me high life. Give me good
That was not the groove I was
times. God
expecting.
gave me feet for dancing.
Woo. That's the jazz. Exactly. That's the jazz.
Yeah, obviously,
Gong, gong. Gong, gong.
beautiful Afrobeat influences throughout Ezra Collective's catalog. It says here in the background, I don't know how accurate this Wikipedia page is of them, that they claimed that the inspiration for the band is from Robert Glasper and Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. Which I think
For the band.
2018, 2017?
Dang.
Yeah, that's the template for their jazz band. So
Nice.
this is obviously has that sort of like characteristic,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
production-wise. What I'm
Yeah.
saying, like in regards to your comment about the vocals being kind of squashed, it's
Yeah.
indicative of like that that kind of music has that kind of production quality,
Yeah.
which I think is actually very refreshing, especially when that Afrobeat groove came in just there.
That was killing. And the bass line,
dude, that is
nailing it. Whoever's doing that,
I'm a
is on
sucker.
point.
Sue me,
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for the Afrobeat. I can't get enough of it.
And I think with the compressed vocal, it's sort of like if you're hearing Sarah Vaughan, you don't want to hear it with that, right?
She would crush with that shit. Are you kidding
Well,
me?
of course she would. I mean, she'd get a crush with with a pickup mic,
Yeah.
But I'm saying
No, it would be
you
like
would want the whole
it
like
would
a
be
more
like
natural
recording a
full brim.
Stradivarius with a bunch of and crushing
Contact
the sound.
mics on,
It's
yeah.
a different.
It's distinctive.
It's distinctive. It's
Yeah.
playing the studio, right?
right.
It's a sound you get from the studio. So
It's
it's
a
not
thing.
It's not a good or bad thing. It's just a texture that they're using,
Yeah.
and it's effective.
Yeah. And the reason I brought up the Blue Note, Rudy Van Gelder Blue Note piano sound, well, not just on Blue Note, but especially when he was doing that, is that a lot of people would say is very effective. It's very distinctive, right?
It's funny,
and it is like, it's not compressed in the same way, but it's
EQ'd
narrow.
to hell.
It's
And then
narrowed.
probably the mic
Yeah.
placement too. There's probably some Van Gelder heads out there that can give us a better idea of that piano sound. But
The mic is shoved in the hole, I believe.
pianists don't love it
Right.
because you don't get the full spectrum of the piano, I think.
Yeah.
But it does sit in the mix and makes the drums. And that's what this vocal sound is doing. It's sitting in the mix in a distinctive way that is part of the sound. It's funny because the first 3 tracks we've listened to have come through the spectrum. Like the Walter Smith, the 3rd track, very natural sounding. It sounds like they're in a small club and you're just listening to the instruments acoustically.
Right.
And the Michele Indeglio has a production, but it's a little bit more of an old school style production. Right. It's not as squashed.
Right, more separation, more like nuanced kind of width to it.
It still kind of sounds like a band in a room.
Yeah.
And then this production sounds very, very individually produced instruments and little notches in the production for everybody.
What would be interesting
Which is
about
cool.
what would be interesting about this is to hear them like say in London, because you said they're UK based. So like in like a really hip club in London, this band's going to sound totally different than what we just heard, more so than the other stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think is like if you see Walter Smith at the Vanguard with that quartet, it's going to be different from their recording, but not really.
It'd be about the same. But can I just say too that this production from Ezra Collective here that has that, it's more of a pop sheen production on it, and I think it's good for the kind of music that they're playing.
Yep.
And I also think it's good that it's on a jazz playlist like this because there's people. It's almost like you can compare it to films, right? Like there are people who won't watch films that don't have that Hollywood sheen of a look to it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then there are people that love like gritty Scorsese in the 70s kind of, Kubrick in the 80s coloring kind of looks to it, right? And so like very distinctive things that have a tone that isn't as palatable. But this has like this really like my kids would love the way that sounds.
Right.
My kids would be a little bit like maybe bored from the Walter Smith III sound.
Right.
Because they would associate with like classic jazz or classical music. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think both, you and I actually, more than people might realize, listen to a lot of things more like this, what we just heard, than we do like the Walter Smith in reality. I mean, not when we're necessarily on here, but just when, I know for me, like, and even, like a lot of the stuff I listen to would never make it to the State of Jazz playlist, even like this kind of crossover stuff. And so my ears are very acclimated to different things. I do think when you're putting your flag down and saying this is the state of jazz, when it starts to get away from what somebody that's like, well, I thought I liked jazz, and I do like that, but that's not really jazz. So like it could go one of two ways. It's like, oh, I really like that. Oh, so I do like jazz. Let me go check out some more jazz. Oh, Walter Smith. So you listen to Ezra Collective first.
I think.
And then you listen to Walter Smith, you're like, wait, I don't like jazz. That's so different,
Yeah, I think if there's anything that this podcast, Peter, over the past 6 years? 6 years, we've discovered is that the word jazz is
useless
for describing music that we're talking about here, right? Everybody has a different definition. Some people hate the word itself and refuse to use it. Other people would say are jazz musicians would say, I don't even use that word, including masters like Miles Davis.
Right.
Refuse to use the word jazz.
Right.
Right. Including people like Duke Ellington didn't like that word. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people who didn't love that word. And the word itself has meant everything from Louis Armstrong to Walter Smith III to apparently now Ezra Collective
Yeah, but
the
Louis Armstrong to Walter Smith III, like that's a line and a lineage that if you use jazz or if you use another term, whatever you want,
direct
makes more sense.
for sure.
You know, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's
but
just
so does Ezra Collective. Honestly,
from Louis Armstrong.
yeah.
Okay.
Louis Armstrong made a wonderful world. That has the same production sheen that I think Ezra Collective has more than
Yeah, but
Walter
is it
Smith.
production sheen that really defines
and
a
intent
genre?
behind it? It has the intent behind it of wanting to reach a larger audience.
Yeah, okay, but think about like when that groove came on, you were like, oh, Afropop. Like we know that's how is that so much clearer of a definition?
It's a type of beat.
Then like that's jazz. Like if we listen to this, you weren't like, oh, that's jazz. Like we can sit here and argue about whether or not it's jazz, and we're big tent guys, I guess. So this is jazz. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like, how come? No, Afropop is a genre too. Like you could be like they have Afropop festivals.
Yes.
Where they'll say this is and where people will come not knowing even if there's not a star group, but their expectation, it's like going to an Italian restaurant. You might not know the chef, but you know there's going to be some spaghetti. If there's not that, there's going to be pizza, or maybe it'll be something you've never heard of, but it's going to be, you know.
So where does the word jazz fit into all of this? Where does it fit into the Michelle and Degliacello? Where does it fit into the Ezra Clark?
It's kind of become useless a little bit.
It is very useless.
But that's separate from the thing of like, is it a offensive, incorrect term? Like that's a different issue.
But there is something about the values of the musicians that are playing the music that is part of the lineage.
But how would somebody coming just to I mean, people are on Spotify like, I want to chill, I'm in a coffee shop, I want to listen to Afropop, I want to be inspired, I want to listen to something with no vocals, I want to listen to Taylor Swift stuff, but I'm sick of Taylor Swift, so Swiftie types. Like the way people actually consume music is so different than the bespoke way that you and I and our dear listeners approach it, you know?
Right.
So I almost feel like the state of jazz, or like what jazz is just, it's almost anything that there could be some kind of fodder or some discussion points, or to be like what you just said, like it's the intent of the musicians and the lineage that
it's the
connects them
lineage of
with.
the musicians. So
But how does anyone know that that's just coming to listen to the music?
people can tell. So people call some of Sting's stuff in the 90s, they're like, oh, when Sting went jazz. We don't consider
I don't
that
think
jazz.
anybody says that.
Yes, they do.
Jazz
it's in
musicians.
it's in popular culture. I just saw it on a TV show, I forget which TV show, very popular TV show. It's like Sting and his jazz music from the 90s. They were just talking about that.
That's a very insider thing.
No, I think that's how people feel because they hear Branford and they hear Kenny Kirkland. They hear jazz musicians playing on his
They
music.
don't know those are jazz musicians. The general
But
public.
it does not sound like when it's Sting and Stuart Copeland and Andy playing the trio thing, when it's like, sending out an yes. It doesn't sound like the sensibilities of those.
Right.
And by the way, those guys actually have jazz roots as well. But they are.
Yeah, how come they weren't?
But they're
jazz?
more into, I think they were, the pop sensibilities of the time. And even Sting, when he made pop records in the 80s, were more pop records. I think when he started using more jazz musicians, people can feel that influence. We maybe are a little bit more immune to it because.
So if Bring on the Night, Dream of the Blue Turtles had come out now, would that be on the State of the Jazz playlist on Spotify? If that came out today?
Possibly. I bet some of those tracks are. Some of those tracks are played by jazz singers, are sung by jazz singers all the time. You know what I mean?
But some of his stuff from before that is sung like
yeah, but you have
Fragile.
to do a treatment. Fragile. That's a jazz influence.
But that was before. That was Police.
Yeah,
wasn't
but
it?
there's is that the Police?
That was before the jazz band.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But another great example would be To Pimp a Butterfly, or D'Angelo, using jazz musicians, and people associate that, especially jazz musicians.
Yeah, but if
they
you
claim
said
that a little bit.
I know, but if it was like State of Hip Hop and To Pimp a Butterfly was on there, which I'm sure it was, no one would be like, "Oh, this is such a varied land." It's like, no, that's a hip hop album. You might say it's
but
like
they would definitely
West Coast.
say there's jazz influence on that album.
Right, but if we put that onto we at this point we could put that on State of Jazz also, because there's jazz influences on it. Like for some reason, jazz is the only one that anything that's remotely related to something jazzy can show up on here, but it doesn't work the other way.
I don't think so.
No, like if you do a trio
all
record,
little tent things, jazz, bluegrass, classical music, they can all get put into broader pop sensibilities.
Okay, but State of Classical is not going to have a Sting pop record on it, even though he's dabbled in classical music, really old classical music with not the sitar. What's the thing?
They're definitely crossover classical.
Well, there's with pop type of stuff, but that's more.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Sting made the whole album of like early music
I call it a
instruments.
sitar. It's not a sitar. What is
with his
it?
like sea chanty songs. That's 100%.
What is sea chanty
That's
song?
100% in a classical crossover realm. That's a NPR subscriber. You know what I mean? Love that shit. I'm telling you,
But that's not going to be on the state
all
of
of the-
classical playlist.
Well, let's.
No. We don't have to, I don't know that there is one. But I'm saying and if it was, it has to be all. But okay, this is what I'm saying. Like something that has a little bit of that influence in Sting's pop stuff that has classical, or like the Beatles. There's a lot of classical stuff. Bum 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 bum. Those horn lines and stuff that doesn't cross over into being a classical album. But for some reason, jazz it does. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just it kind of is what it is. Should we move on?
So
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure what your point is. Is your point that we use all of these other genres and we call them jazz, or they get kind of lumped into jazz?
Yeah,
because I would guess that there's a lot of Punch Brothers on the bluegrass playlists, and I would guess that there's a lot of like
Aren't they bluegrass?
Andrea Bocelli on the classical playlist, and like people who are more pop crossover, or Sarah Brightman, or or Enya or whatever on the classical side of things. Like I would guess that gets lumped in in some of those. By the way, it's this playlist. It doesn't matter. Like it's not.
I know, but we're kind of having fun in debating whether or not this is the state of jazz.
I do
or
think
not.
that the values of the musicians who are playing the music matter, and it's obvious that Ezra Collective and Michelle and Degliocello have a very similar value system from a very similar lineage as Walter Smith III.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I don't think there's anyone at Spotify worried about that and to whether or not they get on this playlist based upon the values that they have.
I agree with you,
doubt.
but I believe people can tell. People can hear.
I don't
that
think
value
people
system.
care about that.
They don't care
The general
consciously,
listener.
but they can tell. They can hear the jazz influence.
Really? Because I feel like if you see it, then you hear it. Okay. So let's listen to the next one. Can we pull up our screen again here so we can see what's happening? Okay, these folks, I know Caleb knows, and I think you know. I'm not familiar with them. Bad, Not Good. I have heard of them. I know they're from Canada. That's all I know.
Yeah, they've been around.
I
for
love Canada.
a
Sue
while,
me.
and we actually got lots of requests to listen to this bad.
Yeah,
Not
maybe
Good,
that's how
so
I know
let's-
the thing. I'm sure I've heard them, but let's check them out. Okay, these folks have 3 million monthly listeners. That sounds different than the other things we've seen. Initial thoughts?
Say what now?
Initial thoughts?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, beautiful. Really, truly beautiful. Drums sound great. Bass sounds great. I love the washy reverb on the horns. Love the melody. Yeah, this is what. Again, I think everything starts to get cluttered in the 1970s, because this is jazz in the 1970s to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This kind of sound.
Yeah.
And so,
Is this This is a throwback, though.
yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. I can't tell if it's a 70s or a 90s throwback, but it's more.
Throwbacks in the 90s, which was throwback. This is 70s.
Yeah. Because remember the time in the 90s where they were thrown back to the 70s?
Yeah. But isn't it also associated with, like, look at this, that image of them? Like, that says a lot, and that's very sophisticated in this day and age of, social media and still images and videos being able to accompany music, sometimes taking I want to check out I want to see if they're going to solo on this.
Yeah, so far we've only heard Walter Smith within.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you were saying about a connection with the lineage. Like, how important is that to be state of jazz if you're improvising? I mean, obviously this is improvised.
whirly with some kind of effects pedal.
Yeah, that's whirly. Chops, not a problem.
These folks clean up at festivals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about a couple of things. So if this represent great soloing, great sound, like you said, I thought it was interesting though, your first thing was like, I love it. And you listed everything about the sound of it was your first impression.
Yeah, I dig it.
So,
Yeah,
no,
for
but I'm
sure.
saying like you were like, I love the drummer. I love that you are like very clued in with, you know, the mix, the sound, the individual sound, and also the mix of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this playlist is obviously Big J.
Yeah.
Jazz, like Big Tent jazz, right? Like none, besides Walter Smith III, none
He
of
might
these
fall
things.
off quickly.
What's that?
He could fall off quickly if he's not careful.
Yeah, none of the things we've heard so far is, well, maybe Michel and Deglicello. None of the things we've heard so far is something you would hear at like the Village Vanguard or any sort of classic New York club situation, which is, I think, what a lot of players who are learning jazz think about when they think of the state of jazz, right?
Yeah.
They think of what is happening in New York City with a small group of people who are really pushing themselves in a way of the purity of improvisation, right?
Right.
And I think, Peter, we often can fall into that trap as well of like thinking about it like that. But I think to a lot of people, this is what they consider to be jazz. Like,
Well, and you know, it's interesting. So you talk about the Village Vanguard, and we can throw in small. I mean, all the clubs. We're not singling out the Village Vanguard, but maybe we shouldn't be like, how come the people that play at the Village Vanguard, that's the state of jazz? Maybe it's the other way. It's like, how come the Village Vanguard doesn't have these folks that actually are the state of jazz? 3 million monthly listeners, these folks from Toronto. I'm sure they're playing at clubs there and around the world at festivals, like you say. I mean, they've got the following and the vibe and the sound. They're doing covers of, you know, Kanye and Tribe Called Quest and MF Doom. Like, they're clued in, obviously, with the younger crowd too. But like, what is wrong with that being the state of jazz, as opposed to us or anybody else sitting in here being like, you're not at the event, you haven't paid your dues, you didn't sit at Smalls till 3 a.m, and then wait your turn, then get up there and swing out. You know,
Yeah.
They're improvising, they can play, they're clued into a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a throwback to another time, but isn't that what culture and art always goes through, different cycles of like connecting with different time periods?
it almost gets into the Loewe, Adam Neely episode as well. You know what I'm saying? About like,
Shall we go there?
is this jazz? But because I think that the people who are quote unquote on the scene
Yeah.
consider themselves to be the real determiners of what is the real music. Actually,
Right.
you know, all these downbeat polls just got released,
Yeah.
and you see everybody, you know, copying or whatever. And someone that I'm friends with on social media and I've known for a long time, great pianist Manuel Valera, said like we should have a poll of the musicians and who they think are the best, because we got the critics and you've got the readers, right? But his point was like the musicians know who's doing the real stuff.
But do we?
You know, well, that's kind of debatable, right?
Yeah.
It's like, is that a little bit insular? It certainly would be interesting to see that list of who the musicians are considering to be like the greatest pianists right now and doing this. But I don't know if like for the general public, if it's like that's what they're wanting, is like who is like. It's again,
The pianist.
We
of
can
New
do
York
a similar
City.
thing with like the film metaphor. Like, does a larger audience really want to know who's like on the cutting edge of independent film?
Right.
Obviously not, because they don't go see a lot of independent films. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they want the next Marvel movie. Well, who knows what they want right now? But like,
Right.
it's a little bit changing. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, so then that begs the question then, or leads to the question, I would say, the state of jazz is like, is this truly a democratic thing where the people speak, the general public is driving this? 3.3 million monthly listeners, as opposed to like some of those downbeat polls are like 47 people, literally.
Yeah.
Like when it says 40, I was like, oh, 47%. And then I was like, oh, 47. I was like, no, that's 47 people
Votes,
voted.
total votes, yeah.
So surely this is a little bit more statistically significant,
It's
right?
just interesting. Yeah, it's just interesting.
But then you have Walter Smith. I bet he doesn't have 3.3 million view monthly. No, he has 116,000
He's
monthly,
winning
which is great.
He's winning my poll.
Yeah,
For
and
sure.
I mean,
if I took a poll, I'd be voting for Walter Smith. That's a great sounding album.
Right, but
and his last album was incredible as well.
Is his music like 100 and whatever that is, whatever the proportion to that, and Bad Bad Not Good, is he that much not as good as them because his listeners are so much less? He's number one on State of Jazz.
Doesn't matter.
That's pretty good.
Doesn't matter.
I know.
Can we listen to one more here? One more?
Yeah, I wanted to get dogmatic.
Well, no, dogmatic
But no,
is
I
good.
do think that this is a combination of, and look, we're making this up as we go. We have no agenda
Let's
here.
listen to a few more. I've got a couple that I want to.
Okay, I just want to say this one thing though.
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
saying that I think that this playlist is maybe trying, it might not be as diabolical as we think in terms of, it's definitely not just the people who spoke, because it's not only high view stuff that's associated with jazz, right? Or that's in the jazz world. Because obviously the Walter Smith. But I think there may be some, he's on Blue Note Records. I think Blue Note Records may have some influence.
Obviously.
Like, how do you get your thing on here? Which is nothing wrong with that. They've got, like,
That's their job.
That's their job.
Yeah.
But like, who's the tastemaker? And this might be a little bit of a combination of anointed tastemakers at places like Blue Note Records, Mac Avenue, big labels, and True Democracy in terms of things percolating up because they get a lot of views because people love it.
All right, let's check out this
Should we
one.
check out Linda?
Hold on. I want to check out this.
Oh, Willow. This is a cool track.
Willow Smith.
Yes.
Pushing and peeling myself out of my disguise. Looking at you now, I'm wondering who am I? If I could try to take you back, I couldn't define.
That's in 7, my friend.
Feeling absence of time, knowing all is decided. There's nothing here left to find. The stories all in my mind, pushing and peeling the layers that cover my mind. Looking into the shadow, now I notice the light.
Kind of killing it. Yeah.
Magic is real when you see it inside, you decide. It's like a snake shedding skin, creating life to begin, and all you know is vanished again, transcending virtue and sin.
Now it's not a 7.
Gotta decide if I'm gonna see it right. Feast our eyes on noble things when suffering is craving the light. Gotta decide how we're gonna heal it right. Feast my eyes on noble things while beauty is a symptom of life. Gotta decide if I'm gonna see it
Good
right.
production.
Feast our eyes on noble things when suffering is craving the light. Gotta decide how we're gonna heal it right.
That's what I'm saying. So to the point of the old man yelling at the cloud, right? This
Damn
is
it.
an
Why did you
artist
do that?
who is, coming from originally whip my hair back and forth, right?
Right.
And is now putting out this thing in 7 with some really interesting harmony, some incredible production. Obviously, she's got loads of resources to make whatever she wants, but she's choosing to make something that is very risky
Yeah.
for the kind of like, potential star that she is.
Yeah.
And she's really putting it out there in an artistic way. I feel like the kids are all right. They're doing great.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like they're making music that is really interesting.
Right. No, I think it's more like this, but this speaks more to like the state of pop. This is a pop track.
Yeah, but it's
And
really good.
it's really good. So
Yeah.
that speaks more to like there's really interesting things happening, which I think has always been the case in so-called pop. Like pop is one of those genres that I think we're in danger of jazz becoming, not in terms of popularity, but in terms of like it not having a lot of meaning. Like what is pop music?
popular music.
Popular music, right?
Yeah.
So it's not stylistically. It could be anything.
It has
right?
it has been anything.
And so that seems to be what we're starting to use as terms of the word jazz. Like jazz is something that's creative, that's improvisatory, or like this is almost like a playlist for people not really wanting to listen to what we traditionally think of as jazz, but trying to listen to music that is either thinking people's music or is creative music or that has a little bit more. It's the NPR crowd, maybe, or I want something. It's not just the NPR.
There's a Black
crowd.
American music thread, and should be through all this.
Yeah, it's not all the way through this, but yes, it should
You know
be.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Maybe not on every track, but there's there is. It's part of it.
But I'm saying, like, like we can say that like Willow, that this is a great track. I've heard some of her other stuff is like
I know.
great stuff happening there. But that just because something is great, then they're jazz. Or somebody's like, I'm really thinking about my composition, so it's classical.
You put some things in 7 and you do these like kind of harmonies. Yeah,
That's
people
true.
are going to label it jazz. It's this similar thing to like the 70s vibe from the Bad Bad Not Good. It's like people are going to identify those sounds with jazz.
I guess it's just
from
a different
70s.
time we're in. Like Stevie Wonder always like was obviously doing interesting things within pop music, but nobody was ever like he represents the state of jazz. You know what I mean? Or he's not.
I
Although
always
he had a lot
considered
of,
him to be one of the great jazz musicians of all time, honestly, in the same lineage as Duke Ellington. Truly.
Yeah.
Incredible orchestrator, incredible composer, incredible improviser. You know what I mean?
Can we listen to one more thing on here that's kind of controversial in terms of it being jazz?
I got a couple more, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to play this one. I know you're going to be like, that's definitely not jazz, and everyone's going to be able to hear it. So here we go.
Ew.
He said,
What is this?
Emmet Cohen, Emmett's Blues.
This is so good, by the way. This whole album, The Vibe Provider. This is
your
what I
vibe
think
provider?
about in the New York clubs, man. This is Emmet. Emmet Cohen, generational artist, for sure. Open studio artist. Swanger, straight up swanger.
The mix, a little different than everything we've heard.
That's what I'm saying, man.
This is
Like you're in the room.
This is like you're
right
at
here
Emmett's
Emmett's
place.
place. Yeah.
and that's a good thing.
Well, again, going back to that Adam Neely video, Adam shouts out Emmet as this sort of like beacon of modern jazz. And I would say it's jazz from the jazz musician's perspective.
Right.
Right? Like back to the Manny Valera thing of like, these are the people that know.
Yeah.
And the people that are bringing other people together. And it just so happens that Emmet is an incredible musician and pianist, and super proud to have him here at Open Studio.
It just also, it just so happens that he has a course on Open Studio. I was going to say that. A really good course.
Yeah.
So go check that out. But this is the thing too. Would this be more like, it would be very easy to say, oh, well, you're saying that, the Canadian guys are like a throwback to 70s fusion jazz or jazz soul, whatever you want to call it. This is just a throwback even further before that. But I don't know if that's the same kind of case, because he's not going for, I think this sounds nostalgic to some people because they're like, oh, it's like I'm in a jazz club. But it's not like, he's not actually throwing himself into a specific era of like, I'm going to play like it's 1959. To me, like this is truly part of that lineage. Not saying that the other stuff shouldn't be considered part of jazz, or maybe that is the state of jazz. Maybe this kind of stuff will fall off to the wayside. But to me, this is truly more of a lineage to today.
And again, that the beat and the groove is what most people are like. People hear that, they're going to say that's jazz, right? Because it's tipping. It's got the walking bass line. It's got the spang-a-lang, walk the dog, ride pattern, right? That's what a lot of people just consider what jazz is. Peter, I will say though, like, so many of the tracks that we've listened to, including the Willow and the Michelle and Degalucello and the Bad Bad Not Good, even though there's some improvisation on the Bad Bad Not Good, it's not what this is, which is people who are in the thick of trying to become connected through improvisation, where the big heart of the music is through the improvised solos, right?
Yes.
And that is where the form comes alive, especially in live situations. That is what institutions like Jazz at Lincoln Center and especially now Jazz St. Louis are doing, is trying to keep the torch going for this kind of jazz, which is improvisational based, where the people that are doing it are like, it's like it's like if you go see like Bad Bad Not Good, that's like going to see Cirque du Soleil, right? And there's like, it's all very choreographed and there's all this thing. And this is like seeing gymnasts at the Olympics, where it's like, we're trying to like push the envelope of what the humans can do on these elements, right? Very specific elements, right? That's what I think the difference is.
Yeah.
And you either get it or you don't get it, or you like it or you don't like it. And there's no right or wrong answer, but I think there is a difference between those kinds of things. And yeah, it's just a different frequency.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great. I mean, if all this stuff, we got Pat Metheny's new record we didn't even get to. I mean, there's like a lot of cool stuff on here.
Christian Sands,
yeah.
That's definitely
Miola.
worth
We
it.
got some blasts from the past. We got some new artists. We've got some medium, and then we have Willow.
Lakeisha Benjamin, want to give a shout out?
Yep. Esperanza Spalding. I don't know.
Andre 3000.
To me, it's like, okay, so now that's interesting. We're not going to even go down that whole road. But to
Played
me,
at Newport.
He did. To me, Andre 3000 fits on this the most. Like, because in terms of more so than Willow, I'm not saying I like it more or less or whatever, just because he kind of like put himself into, I want to make a jazz adjacent record. You know what I mean? No, he said he's doing something different, you know. Well, look, till next time.
You'll hear it.